This episode of Educators Without Borders is made possible by Ed2Market, a complete go-to-market strategy for K-12 authors, speakers, consultants, and thought leaders. Learn more at ed2market.com.
Somewhere out there, in a classroom or staying up late at home, a teacher is planning that next great lesson that will inspire and change a child's life. Whether they're looking for new, innovative ways to engage and motivate students, or connecting learning to real life in a hands-on way, it's always with the end in mind and the context of global citizenship and advancing our humanity. Join us on our search for leading voices in education across the globe as we convene to talk about the topics that matter and inspire all educators in the pursuit of that next great lesson. Welcome to Educators Without Borders, presented by School Rubric.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Educators Without Borders, presented by School Rubric. I'm your host, Ryan Sagar, the co-founder of the nonprofit organization School Rubric. Today, disrupting education. If not now, then when? Before we get started, I want to give a big thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Ed2Market for supporting the mission of School Rubric and Educators Without Borders through today's panel. Also, thank you to Forefront Education. Now, the last 15 months, education has looked very different. Educators have been forced to innovate, adapt, and change how we teach. The question is this a catalyst for reimagining education? Today, we are here to discuss how we can fundamentally change the education system. Now, a lot of you are tuning in live, and we do want to hear from you, the audience. So make sure right now, before we get started, that you go to the comments section and tell us who you are and where you're located, and we'll have the School Rubric production team put that on the screen. Also, as we begin our discussion, I encourage you, if you have a reaction or a question, to write that in the comments section. It doesn't matter if you're tuning in on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. We'll make sure the School Rubric production team puts that on the screen, and we'll get to some of those questions tonight. Also, I have something very exciting. There's an opportunity for you to win a prize tonight. I want to give a big thank you to Dr. Katie McKnight, a leading voice on literacy, who has donated a set of books on literacy and learning centers for 6th to 12th graders. How do you win those books tonight? All you need to do is write a comment during tonight's discussion and fill out a brief feedback form that we will be putting up throughout our discussion. You can also find that feedback form in the description on Facebook and on YouTube. Okay, before we get deep into the discussion, let's do some brief introductions. We are going to start with Dr. Spencer Fowler, who is joining us today from Beijing, China. Spencer, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, good morning from Beijing, China, where it's a little bit rainy today. I'm originally from Kingston, Ontario, Canada. I'm a former professional ice hockey player and firefighter that fell in love with education early on. And my journey around the world is taking me to some incredible schools, incredible places. And finally, I've ended up in Beijing, where I'm working for a school that's connected to Peking University, a school that's very provocative and avant-garde with its teaching and learning. And I'm very excited tonight to share more about the kind of things that we're doing here, hopefully to inspire and help other schools out there.
Yeah, a very unique background you have, Spencer. We're also joined today by Dr. Young Zhao, who is author of 33 books. Yes, I said that right, 33 books. And he's working on his 34th book. Dr. Young Zhao, could you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure, thanks. I never knew you guys would become so serious about this show, and this is getting overproduction. This is wonderful. You know, I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying the moment of celebrity. So thank you so much. I'm Yong Zhao. I'm a professor at the University of Kansas and the University of Melbourne. I actually grew up and was educated in China, but have been in the US and other places for quite a long time. I'm very excited about this opportunity, and I just want to share with you to say what I think education should be like and what can we do about it.
We're excited to get the discussion started, Dr. Young. We're also joined by Saba Golay, who has a very unique educational journey. Saba, tell us a little bit about you and your journey.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Saba, and I'm joining everyone from Los Angeles area. I actually grew up around in Southern California, originally from India. My background, actually, I started off as artist, but really spent my time also working as an architect and urban designer, worked on a lot of educational spaces before I even got into education, and educational institutes in Southeast Asia and the Middle East. And then found myself starting a school about 11 years ago that was based on principles that I learned in the architecture studio model applied to education, which is based in Cambridge, and have been living out in Cambridge, Massachusetts for the last 11, 12 years. But I've been out west a little bit, had a little baby recently. So that's been keeping me pretty excited about the joys of learning from a newborn's perspective. So I'm very happy to be here today.
Well, we're excited to have you here on the show. As you can tell, we have a very diverse panel of people joining us today, and we did that with intention. We think these are the right people to have this discussion. We have a university professor, we have an international school director, an urban designer turned education and technology entrepreneur. So I'm very excited for today's discussion, and I see people tuning in. Tracy Browder, I saw somebody from the Philippines tuning in. I want to encourage everybody to continue to comment as we continue this discussion. We love hearing where you're all tuning in from, but let's get right to the discussion. Question number one comes from Shawate Kade, an assistant principal from Texas. Let's hear what she has to say.
Hi, my name is Shweta Khare. I'm the assistant principal in the Fort Bend ISD district at Colony Bend Elementary. My question is, envisioning the future of education and of the world is critical to driving innovation in our current work. How would you argue that the current education system is or is not delivering on its purpose of developing truly future-ready young people? What changes do you believe need to occur now to ensure we achieve this purpose? Thank you.
Dr. Young, we would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. So let's start with you.
Well, thank you. I think that question probably captures every question we want to discuss in this panel. We want to disrupt education, we must disrupt for a reason. So there must be something that's bad enough to invite all of us to invent education, to start new view, Saba, to start what you are doing, Spencer, in Beijing. A number of things. I think the biggest problem right now in our current education is that we are not helping our students developing the abilities they will need. That's a very simple, simple statement, because technological revolutions always redefine the value of knowledge. What you learned could be valuable 30 years ago or 40 years ago, won't be valuable today. What you used like 10 years ago would not be valuable tomorrow. And so that's really the thing. But I'm not advocating really 21st century skills. And 21st century skills, you could have somebody would have needed that in the 15th century. What we really need to do is to turn the students into entrepreneurs, like Spencer was saying, turn them into creative entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are not only talking about business. There are social entrepreneurs, there are entrepreneurs, there's public entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs, in essence, are problem solvers. If our students can identify problems, and can come up with solutions with that, that would be great. And how to do that is that you need to have a jagged profile of qualities. Every human being is unique, can be unique. How do we develop every student to be more unique and great, and use their greatness and translate that greatness into solutions to existing problems and for others, so they will gain economic prosperity and self-satisfaction.
Yeah, I really enjoy what you're saying about every student is unique. And I know you're doing some unique things, Spencer, at your school. Do you want to kind of talk on this a little bit?
I mean, to start, I would just say that it's difficult to inspire students to do that, to be their authentic self, and to pursue these things, these challenges in areas that they want to improve, because they're stuck in this rat race, this academic rat race, where they're being then vetted and evaluated based on their GPA. So it's how do you motivate, how do you inspire students to step away from that when they're having to prep for the IBDP or the AP or the A levels, and then the SAT, ACT, IELTS, and TOEFL? There's just not a lot of time. And so schools are this factory to, and ensure the success and the appropriate ranking of their students academically. So it's hard to sway them, at least in this context, to then consider doing things or connecting their knowledge and skills outside of the school to more meaningful projects. So it's tough. It's tough. And that's sort of my job, is to help inspire and keep people on the edge, so that there's that ability to grow, to be challenged, to step outside of the status quo, and to be speaking or challenging, I guess, the current state of education. And my worry is that with the disruption, people are getting even more conservative now and more focused on these exams and tests and test preps, et cetera, and sort of that arena and that beast of education. So I feel like in some regard we're losing that advantage that we had a year or two ago.
Yeah, I saw a comment up there from Melissa saying, yay to uniqueness and promoting that uniqueness. And I've heard that word a lot, of schools being factories. And I know, Young, you've talked a little bit about that in some of your TEDx conversations. Does anybody want to kind of take that on, about how we can re-envision schools and not have them look so much like factories?
Well, I mean, I think, I want Saba to jump in, but because I visited Newview, I liked it a lot, but one of the issues with the schools is we have this goal of homogeneity. We want everybody to learn the same thing at the same speed and pass it and take a test of it. I think what we need, schools have to basically be redone, in a sense that, how about a school of one? Today, after COVID-19, our students can learn from anywhere and can collaborate with anybody, can work for anybody with remote work and collaboration. I think there's a lot of things that can be done, but we need to say, do we need the curriculum? Do you need the assessment? If we don't need the curriculum, what else can we do? But I want Saba to jump in. I think Saba has done something very unique there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, that's a beautiful point that Young mentioned in terms of the homogeneity. We don't accept the variety that's going to exist when you have a group of young people. They're not all starting at the same level. They don't have the same interests. They don't have the same backgrounds. And that, to me, is a big asset. And so when we started Newview 11 years ago, the whole idea was to bring together middle school students, high school students, different age groups, break down the barriers that exist, these superficial, even grade designations, and really get them to collaborate around projects and bring their experiences, their interests to bear on these collaborative projects that they were working on. And really understand that each student's drive and their passion really grows and develops as you bring in interesting problems and have them look at those problems from their unique perspectives, and negotiate and try and work together to resolve differing perspectives on how to design a product or deal with a community issue. So I think that piece is really transformational from a school perspective, is if you take the student and really think of them, not that they need to reach this particular place by the end of 4 years, but realize that each student has their own student journey. And that brings into question, what does assessment look like then? How are we evaluating students? How are we able to really showcase and highlight a student's journey? Is it a portfolio? Are there other means and methods that you can showcase their work? So that I'm gonna stop there for a second.
You know, and actually, Ryan, I need to add one more thing. I think in the last question, there's one phrase. I'm not sure we should do that. Is it, can you get students to be future ready? Nobody does that. No one is ready for changing future. We get students to be ready to make the future. Our kids are creators of the future, but there's no definite future waiting for us. That's unpredictability, that's volatile, we don't know. So that's why I say we prepare children to make the future for us.
I like that comment about students creating the future. Well, let's move into question 2. And this comes from Paul Fachman, who is the head of school at Frankfurt International School. Let's roll question number 2.
Hello, Paul Fachman from Frankfurt International School. What is the lens by which you believe we should be looking at the positive effects of educational disruption? There's been much discussion on academic achievement, social emotional learning, and inequity over the past year. Which of these, if any, should we be looking at as indicators of how education is being disrupted and whether our efforts are being successful?
Well, Saba, I know you have a lot of experience and a wealth of perspective on what we can do differently in traditional education. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on this question to get us started.
Yeah, and it's great to see Paul. I've actually visited FIS a number of times. So I think Paul mentioned a couple of areas in terms of academic achievement and social emotional learning and inequity. These have been really hot topics. And I would say that these are lenses that we should be looking at. And there's others that really pertain to other contexts. So I would say this is really dependent on where schools are located, their history, what they're doing, their current practices. It's a process of self-reflection and self-examination and really seeing where the areas of growth are. Some other areas I would say that are also important: assessment, access to technology, professional development for teachers. One of the areas for us that was really important when the pandemic began was really to initiate how could we have more parent engagement. We realized that learning no longer was just about the student, that it involved a broader community. And really understanding how we create hybrids and involved discussions with parents and what was possible and probable, what were the technology needs at home for different students, different contexts, different learning environments, health and well-being of students. We had students whose parents were healthcare workers. We had a student's parent was living out of a tent in their garage because they couldn't enter the home. So suddenly we had to really rethink and bring in the parent community into the context of our studio environment to really work through a lot of these issues. So I would say that a lot of these kind of lenses are really crucial to for schools to really look at deeply and to question. We had a lot of community meetings. We had coaches and staff meetings to look at even other issues. Assessment was a big one, even though we've had a really alternative type of assessment model that's more portfolio-based. That's based on the studio model. We really had to rethink even, are we measuring our students' success accurately? And so we went through whole processes of even taking our studio transcript and through a joint effort, evaluating it, critiquing it, having the students critique it. So these things are really critical. And in terms of, if our efforts are being successful, I think that's a question that we have to pose to all of our constituents, not just examine it from top down, but get our students involved, get our families involved, in addition to the educators that are involved in these topics.
Yeah, you're talking a lot about parent involvement now. Spencer, I know you're at a school. You're one of the people on the panel that's actually in a school. Do you want to kind of touch on this a little bit?
I think that's one of the elements that most schools miss is the network from the students, the parents themselves, the parents' networks, faculty and staff, their networks, and the resources that we have access to in cities like Beijing that most don't, and how that we can tap into so much more when we lower the walls of the school and when we invite other people in to be a part of this learning journey. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes schools make, is that they have the walls up around the school and they try to keep it insular. We don't function like that. We don't function where we think we have enough faculty and staff or even students, that we're constantly looking for more people and more resources to access, that we can do more meaningful work. There's more of a stretch and reach there, so that projects and initiatives will then allow students to connect their knowledge and skills to more meaningful things.
Yeah, I really like that idea of opening up the school walls and not keeping them enclosed. Before we get to our next question, I do want to encourage everybody that's tuning in to go ahead and hit the like, subscribe button wherever you're tuning in from, so that you can stay up to date on the latest from School Rubric, from leading voices in education from around the globe. Also, we do want to encourage you all to continue to comment, and if you have a question or reaction, make sure you go to the comments section and write it in there, and we'll make sure the School Rubric team puts it on the screen. We've got Matt tuning in from Bangkok. We appreciate you being here and joining us tonight, Matt. So let's get into question number 3, which comes all the way from Bangkok. This actually comes from Bangkok, Thailand. Brad Latsky, who is a former international school leader, a consultant, a mentor. He's also an Educators Without Border alumni. So let's hear what Brad has to ask our panel.
Hi, everyone. This is Brad in Bangkok. I'm a former international school leader, consultant, and mentor. Here's my question for the panel. Many teachers, students, and parents are eager to return to physical campuses and the educational model that was prevalent in our pre-pandemic schools. However, there are a growing number of people who actually prefer remote work, prefer virtual schooling and virtual teaching. Some would venture to say that this new model of schooling is only a gateway to further disruptions and innovations in our educational model. As our societies begin to emerge from the pandemic and governments push for a reopening of school campuses, how can we continue to build upon the virtual schooling model in a sustainable and scalable way?
Spencer, I know you have some insight in this area, so let's start with you and then move it around the room.
Sure. I mean, I'll try to answer this through story, because before the pandemic, our school has been exploring and experimenting with how do we use fully online and hybrid courses where we're working with different people. And this happens with a one-off lecture or a lecture series. It could be that we have people complementing a course and that they're working with the students throughout a semester. We've had people, engineers, entrepreneurs, doctors, politicians, people, like I said, at different times chiming in for a full and complete semester. So it's not just the faculty we have here, but also encouraging and getting more people to then offer courses or complement courses. So something that we've been doing for quite some time. We've even had faculty run a course in conjunction with Harvard University, so that students can do online virtual courses, getting the Harvard credentialing, but then also the teacher also being a student alongside of their students. And so the learning and the growth there, and also these students then learning alongside other people from around the world too. And so we've been playing around to see, what's possible. And then when things hit and we were then apart from each other and we had to work virtually, there wasn't really much drama or issue there for us, because we've been playing in that sandbox for quite some time. What I would be encouraging people is to look at the virtual space, whether it's hybrid or fully online, to see what outside resources can complement what they're doing. Don't feel handcuffed to the teaching faculty you have and or even the students you have. Our school was disrupted where we were bringing over refugees to our school to study on the ground in Beijing, and that was halted because of the COVID crisis. But now we've been forced to be even more creative and think, how can we support these people? And in the past, we had one person coming per year, but now we have 50 students teaching more than 20 refugees in Jordan. So it's actually helped us to improve that service and that care and that attention for other people outside of our school. So you're right. I think that, or to the question, what do we do? There are people that thrive in this environment, but we also want to make sure that it's fluid, it's nimble, it's agile, and we need to be connecting to other people, as I've been saying all along. Our program allows for that because it's a bespoke program where we're not following an IB or an AP program. So we have the freedom and flexibility to then do that.
Yeah, Saba, do you want to kind of get into this area a little bit with, you know, this virtual learning environment that we're all in, and even workplaces have moved to? What does that look like moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question that we all are exploring and have been exploring in different ways. I know at NewView, really a big question for us was, since all of our studios are hands-on, project-based, students are working collaboratively, the big question was, how does this translate into a virtual environment when students are sitting side by side, building, designing, sharing sketches, you know, being able to critique and share ideas. And part of that, you know, shift to virtual was really facilitated partially by technology. We had a platform that we were using where students could be collaborating, but a big portion was like, how could we translate that hands-on piece, that physical prototyping and fabrication work, in spaces where students were now in their homes. And so we, you know, coming up with new ways to enable students to still do that type of work. And for us, that translated into these send home maker kits that were specialized to certain studios. So if we were doing a studio that was more based around synthetic biology, could we, you know, we would send these sort of prepackaged toolkits and materials so that students could actually be physically making things still. So they weren't losing the sense of the tactile sense of actually, you know, embodying and making, which I think is very critical to the hands-on learning piece. And still there was this dialogue and collaboration that was happening between students. Now, having said that, there are some students that really took to that, and there was, you know, a handful that still struggled and challenged. They really needed to be in the space with other students. So we can't, you know, that's an important facet of learning, is actually being in the same space. So I think what we'll see in the future are all types of hybrid environments moving forward, as we're seeing now. And I think there's been such a plethora of all types of models that we can now look at and examine and see how students and teachers are you know, challenged in the struggles, and how students are benefiting also from these environments.
I think it was Young who earlier was mentioning about, you know, students being at different spaces and places, and that footprint or that passion. And it reminds me of this class that one of our math teachers running, where he's allowed or empowered the students to choose any courses they want. It happens to be a variety of different MIT math courses. So now you have the math teacher as more of a coach. And you think about an F1 race, there's the pace car that goes out for one lap and then gets off the track. But most teachers stay on the track. You know what I mean? They're not allowing those race cars to sort of move at their own pace and to compete with themselves. And thinking about this one class where you have these high-level math students doing these different MIT math courses, and the faculty member then having to learn to then be able to coach, to be in the pit stops area, so that they can then be helping these students when they need to, checking in, checking out, to make sure everything's okay, but not always having to be in front of the students, and looking at all the incredible resources that are out there. So this is something that I thought was really inspiring and unique.
I think what Spencer was saying, I just want to re-emphasize that there's we got to really think about diversity. There's no one student who is going to say, I'm going to reject online, but also I'm only going to do normal in-person. It's a matter of adding diversity. I think Saba said that thing. You know, so how do we keep a system going? Our education has been too homogenized. So this actually goes back to the other question, I think Paul's question about what lens. I just want to say a few things about what lens is that. Depends on who you are. If you're a policymaker, you look at big data, that's different, but no student is the average. So if you are a teacher, you look at different data, you look at different angles. If you're a school leader, you look at different angles. And we have all, you know, your audience is so diverse. We need to each look at students differently. If I were a school principal, I look at how each student moves in my school, how each student has a chance to be successful, not to be judged as a failure or at risk, how each student is creating value for other people. But also with outcomes, we also look at big data can be quite dangerous. You know, I wrote a book about this called What Works May Hurt. There are a lot of outcomes in a big data sense can show negative. High PISA scores can have negative lifestyle or negative life satisfaction. East Asian countries' test scores on the TIMSS can be high, but their confidence is lower. So how does the Americans may not know much, but we are very confident? How do you like that? Do you like confidence? Do you like that? So these are very complicated situation, but I would encourage, if you are a teacher, a school principal, look at how each and every student is moving through your system through a lot of diverse opportunities to become the unique self they can be.
Loving the discussion, guys. Before we move into our next question, I do want to remind everybody that's watching, there's an opportunity for you all to win a prize tonight, a wonderful resource for your work or to share with another educator. We've been great. Dr. Katie McKnight donated a set of 4 Literacy and Learning Center books for middle school and high school students that we'll give away tonight. And again, all you need to do is simply make a comment throughout tonight's discussion. You'll also need to fill out the feedback form, which we will share out, and you can find in the description link and also on the description link on YouTube and in Facebook. Let's move right into question number 4, which comes from us from Dr. Tarek Razik, head of school at Jakarta International School in Indonesia.
Hello, my name is Tarek Razik. I am the head of school at Jakarta Intercultural School. There is a saying, systems don't change because we identify them. They change because we disrupt them. What do you view as the greatest obstacles to the field of education moving from studying the problem to actively disrupting the status quo and creating measurable change?
Well, let's start with you, Saba, given your background in innovation and changing the status quo for education. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this question. And then I also know we have a question from the audience that we're going to get to after we kind of address this question. So go ahead and start us off, Saba.
Yeah, I love this question, Tarek. So I would say, also we're not the only ones that disrupt systems. As we've seen, the pandemic has been one of the biggest disruptors of education in recent times. But, going back, I think in terms of what we are able to do, thinking of educational institutions not as these silos, and we sort of heard it on this panel, but when we started NewView, 11 years ago, we knew that even starting a school from scratch, we could not do this on our own. We realized that, even our projects really needed to tap into what was happening in the community issues. So when we started, we partnered with a local private school, Beaver Country Day, as the sort of external studio model that students could engage with. So there were students coming from that partner school every year, and they would get this immersive experience that was very different from the experience that they were getting back at their home school. So, I think that sense of being able to work together and partner across industries, across, typologies with businesses, local businesses, academic institutions is really, really key to moving the discussion and education forward. And allowing experimental models to emerge. So there's a school that we work out here with in Southern California, which is called Odyssey STEM Academy, and we were a partner in sort of launching this school. And this is a public school, and what was really intriguing about the start of the school was the district really supported this new model high school to emerge. Really seeing that there was a need and an openness to iterating and developing this alternative STEM-based school. And the school started with a really unique foundation, which was definitely on the projects, STEM-based education, but they have a very strong internship program that's embedded in the school, where students as freshmen spend a whole trimester doing internships across the neighborhood. And And so we have ninth graders that are involved with different organizations and different companies. And UView has been a part of setting up an idea lab where students are working on hands-on projects, and it's a fully integrated curriculum where math, science, the language arts are all integrated into the projects that students are working on. So really this wouldn't have happened without having strong partners at the district level, board members, families who really are willing to understand this new model of education. But that's really key, is allowing these experimental models to emerge and taking those first steps and accepting that there will be changes and iterations that come with time, that we're allowed to engage in this process, that it's not fixed in stone, I think is really, really important in order to kind of take this step forward. And sometimes I think curriculum itself can be a roadblock for many of us. We've worked with so many teachers, done so much professional development over the years, and teachers sometimes are just so excited to leave maybe their English curriculum behind and to actually create projects that are meaningful and relevant to the times. At UView, we had our entire spring trimester when the pandemic broke out that was really dedicated to questions that students had about the pandemic, whether that was the design of PPE or looking at how the elderly were dealing with social isolation and creating different ways that they could connect. So really timely topics can be brought into the context of education. So curriculum doesn't have to also be fixed in stone, that it can be really connected to what's happening and relevant, and students finding meaningful interest in relevant topics.
Yeah, I like how you're kind of giving some very concrete examples of what you're doing to disrupt education. We do have a question from the audience that kind of addresses this kind of how we've been very broad and generic where education is with some of these topics. And I want to put this on the screen. It says, what you've been saying is quite broad and generic, whereas education is highly controlled by political bodies around the world. Can you address a particular graphic location and share your thoughts? And I'm going to put you on the spot here, Dr. Young. Can you kind of talk on this a little bit about maybe some examples of other geographic locations, what they're doing to disrupt education?
Well, I think, you're absolutely right. Every education system is controlled by political bodies. And what I am dreaming here is really about what I call as liberal as possible. Even in the U.S., has you distributed the education system, but every state has regained a lot more control, since No Child Left Behind. So what I've seen different countries, but no matter how hard it is, even like in mainland China, there are schools who are trying to innovate, trying to change. I'm not talking about Spencer's International School in Beijing. I'm talking about Chinese local schools. I'm working with a school in Chongqing, China, and that school has taken the great stride to make changes, but not exactly as where Tarek could be. I used to talk with Tarek when he was in Beijing to build a school within a school. We could build a new view within every school, not every possibility. So I think we are talking about, I'm talking about the potential changes that can happen anywhere if you believe in some common values. If we agree that technology revolution is changing our world, if you agree that human beings have to learn to live together in the future, if you agree that every student in the future has to create a job, not to find a job, if you agree that our students have to solve unpredictable problems with a lot more creativity and curiosity, if you agree with that, whatever political systems you're in, you probably will have to change the education. The system may not allow you to do it, but parents and students and teachers can quietly start that kind of disruption. And disrupting education can be dangerous in some educational systems, but it needs to be done, and it is being done.
Spencer, I know you guys have disrupted education where you are. So do you want to talk a little bit maybe about, before we get into this last question, how you guys were actually able to do that?
You may not want to say too much, Spencer.
I think it comes down to who you're hiring, who you have a part of your school. I mean, we're hiring people that want to help change education, who want to advance education, and we're part of the education reform. That's why we exist. And so people who, if they're teaching biology or chemistry, whatever that area and discipline is, they're looking to reinvent it and re-inspire it in different ways. And not only that, there's this commitment to then contributing to that area and field of expertise. So if you're an English teacher, then what are you writing? What are you contributing to in that world? If you're an art teacher, what kind of art are you producing? Math, etc. And so having the students working with these people, these colleagues, if you will, and seeing them working on their own projects. So it's not just I'm a teacher, I'm going to teach, and that's all I do. But seeing them struggling and seeing them work on something, seeing them successful with something, and then also being included into that network, into that world. So we have people that are fired up and excited about changing education. But not only that, it's also, what is my other passion outside of education, that passion in biology, chemistry, like I mentioned before. And if you have that biology expertise, then you need to be in the labs trying to cure cancer, coming up with different COVID vaccines to help people, or different ways that you can refrigerate it, keep it cold, etc. So how are we, faculty and students alike, trying to solve real world problems that we're faced with in Beijing that other people might be faced with as well?
Yeah, I really like what you said about building that team around you. And I think it touches on what Young was saying about finding some common values with the people that you work with, and kind of pushing that agenda with your school. So let's get into, we want to get to our last question today. It's a shame that we do have this discussion. We could probably talk for hours about this, but let's get to our last question of the day. And this comes from Jared Harris, the head of school at Cairo American College in Egypt.
Hello, I'm Jared Harris, the head of school at Cairo American College. Closing words for those who are enjoying this panel discussion, whether they are school leaders, classroom teachers, or education disruptors of any kind. Where would you suggest they focus their efforts right now to influence meaningful change in their community, school, or classroom?
So great question. And for this question, we do want to hear from all of you. We're going to start with you, Spencer. So what are your final words to the audience out there to compel them to take action and disrupt education?
I mean, the starting point for us is, what kind of courses are we offering that's going to inspire students to do research? It's going to inspire faculty to do research. And what kind of things would they be able to realize within those courses? How does it connect and extend to other people? I think that we need to be more intentional with the kind of courses that we're offering, and then what could be teased out from that experience. As I said before, the teachers need to be modeling and engaged as well. So that would be something that I would be the seed that I'd be hoping to plant here on this platform today.
Dr. Young Zhao?
I'm just going to go agree with Spencer, but I would focus on students. I would start by asking each and every student what they're good at, what they want to improve, and what they're passionate about, and how their strength and passion can solve other people's problems. So, I've been advocating for what I call product-oriented learning, that every learning is about solving an unknown problem. So you start by identifying the problem, then you work with yourself and others, and globally or locally, to solve that problem and to make sure that solution matters. That solution can be good, can be better, can be high quality. So think about that, solving unknown problems, debating about the problem, come up with a solution, revise the solution towards the end.
Great. Saba?
Yeah, I think those meaningful learning experiences really start at home. And I would say curating the studios, the topics, and the bigger questions that students are answering. And oftentimes, again, it comes from looking within our city or in our community as to what are some of those hot topics and what are the issues that are most relevant. So we've had students who became really passionate and interested in questions of accessibility in terms of how can you design products that are truly accessible, or that can really serve to improve one person's life. And just through that, through working with another individual to help them, I think that process builds a lot of these really important social, emotional skills, being able to empathize and really see the world from somebody else's perspective. Our students right now are having to, they're developing this art piece, this accessible art piece in our local playground in the city of Cambridge. They're working with the city of Cambridge and going through that whole process. And it's a very long-term project. But again, I think these topics are really, you can bring them in from what's happening right in your own neighborhood and engaging student interest from there. I think it's a really powerful tool of learning.
Well,
I like what Yao said. I like what Yao said, but I wouldn't let the teachers off the hook. I think we need to be asking them too. Like, what is it that they're passionate about? What is it that they're talented in? What is it that they want to try to uncover and improve as well? I feel like they have to have those projects too. It can't just be the students.
Agree.
So both the students, the teachers, and guys, this has been a wonderful discussion. I want to thank every one of you on the panel tonight. I also want to thank everybody that tuned in live. A big thank you to our partners, Ed2Market, Forefront Education, and Dr. Katie McKnight, who was so gracious to donate those books for us. And we will be announcing the winners shortly by tomorrow, and we'll get that book set out to tonight's winners. So make sure that you fill out the feedback form if you did comment throughout tonight's panel. But the conversation that we're having here, it doesn't stop here. We have a great opportunity to continue this conversation. I encourage everybody that's watching to join School Rubric's Facebook group, Global Educators Network, and continue the conversation that we're having here. That's how we learn and grow as educators. It's a great place to go and connect with educators from around the world. I also want to share with you, as we are getting ready to do our first Spanish Educators Without Borders, Educadores Sin Fronteras, and we are really excited about this. It's global reach of connecting the dots of everybody from around the world and learning from each other. And that's really what School Rubric is about, is connecting educators from all walks of life and learning from each other. This unique dialogue, I know, has got me thinking a lot about the future of education. What does the future of education look like? What does the future of your school look like? What does the future of your teaching journey look like? I want to encourage everybody that tuned in live tonight to reflect on the ideas and discussions we heard here today and develop creative solutions. Let's bring that entrepreneurial spirit and attitude to create that future that our kids deserve. Thank you. And until the next edition of Educators Without Borders, so long. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching School Rubric's Educators Without Borders. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we highlight voices and perspectives of educational leaders across the globe. To stay in the know with our latest upcoming panels, interviews, tutorials, and more, make sure that you follow us on social media or visit us at schoolrubric.com. Thank you.